Hello everyone, and on this episode of the Behind Yourself show, I'm at the Apiary, my Apiary. It's on the Berkshire Downs, which for anyone outside of England is, I would describe it, southern England, southern central England, probably about 50 miles west of London, something like that, in a area of outstanding natural beauty. And this time of year, at least for me, I tend to leave the honey boxes on for as long as I can, mainly to ensure that the bees have continuity of food through the summer going into the autumn, just so I don't need to worry about whether they've got enough stores. But this time of year I tend to take the honey boxes off, also known as supers, and extract the honey. So if you're interested in any honey, then please go to behiveyourself.co.uk. I've got a shop there. But the other issue is wasps and robbers. Now, I could almost set my calendar for the 1st of August, and certainly, if I mind correctly, that is a day or so between the summer solstice and the autumn equinox. I think the autumn equinox is going to be on the 22nd of September. So it's almost the midpoint of those two, a solstice and an equinox. And maybe that's a signal for wasps to come out. Now, over the last 12 to 18 months, this part of the country, and I think I can safely say for England generally, we've had an above average amount of rain, and I've had a few losses of colonies of bees over that time, and particularly in the spring. And the spring was a bit poor for the bees in terms of you have the flowering trees coming out in bloom. But unfortunately, the weather was so bad that the bees couldn't have time to go out and forage. So I think the honey take this year is going to be pretty poor. Now, what I need to contend with at this time of year is wasps and robbers. Maybe this is going to be the theme for today. And interestingly enough, haven't seen that many wasps at all, really. And as for robbers, haven't really seen them either. Robber bees are honeybees from other colonies who are a bit short on food and try and get into other weaker colonies' hive to rob them of their food. Now, what I've been experimenting this autumn, or sort of this late summer, I should say, is the entrance. Now, what normally happens is that wasps and robbers overwhelm the guard bees on the entrance and get into the hive that way. And the traditional way of dealing with it is to narrow the entrance so it can only admit a bee's width. So that way the guard bees can let their own bees in and keep out the wasps and other colonies' bees. Doesn't always work that well. In really bad wasp years, what we've done is set traps. So the wasp trap would consist of a jar with some sort of clever entrance at the top. I think we've concluded that's what wasps really like, or at least really attracted to, is beer. I think they like things which have, I don't know, maybe a hoppy, yeasty type of aroma to them. Certainly, I add a little bit of sugar, a teaspoon of sugar to the beer mix, just to perhaps try and get re-fermentation going, so it's a bit more yeasty. And on one year, I just filled this jar. It's a big jar. It's a jar which is almost as tall as your hand and sort of quite a wide jar. Filled it completely up with wasps, and still it wasn't enough. So what I've been experimenting with this year is a different entrance block. This entrance block is called a Robo block. You can get it from a company called Thorn. They sell beehives and beekeeping paraphernalia and all sorts. It's not a plug, I'm not sponsored by them. And I fitted them. So basically it's an aluminium block. It's got 4 sides, and it has different settings. So one setting is one big slit type of entrance which has a sliding door, so you can adjust it. You can go probably even one bee space if you really wanted to contain any robbers. But it's got a special robbing section which is made up of holes, a series of holes which are 1 bee space in diameter, and then a second row of holes which just offset to that. And looking at the Robo block now, and I've got an odd wasp trying to figure out that they at least at this point in time, they seem to be a bit bamboozled about how to get into the hive. So these Robo blocks, at least with the robbing setting, seems to be working quite well at the moment. On another hive, I've got it set to the just slit setting where you can slide it, and that seems to be okay as well. There is one other setting, and that's if you want to collect pollen. You just rotate the Robo block around, and the holes are slightly smaller than what's necessary. So when the bees go in with their pollen sacs, it rubs off on the entrance of the hole entrance, and the pollen falls down into a little trap underneath. So I haven't tried that. I'm not really that interested either in collecting pollen or really seeing what pollen that they have, to be honest with you. But you, in fact, on that topic, you would be amazed when you pull out a brood frame sometimes when they've been collecting pollen. The amazing colours you can get. So you might think, oh, maybe it's yellows or whites, but you can get purples and almost bluey colours. It depends on what they've been foraging on, and reds and oranges and some really deep deep colours, and that's really great. So what I'm planning to do for the rest of my time out is I'm going to leave the apiary now, but I want to tell you about a article I'm writing, and it's to do with the history of the village and a particular person who lived in the 19th century who's connected with this village. So I'll speak to you in a minute.
You're listening to the Beehive Yourself show. And now for a history lesson.
Okay, the parish of Beedon has, one could say a relatively famous son called William Woodley. Now, he has left an extraordinarily interesting, detailed, detailed as maybe, time capsule of life in this village, life on the Berkshire Downs during the late 19th century, probably from 1880, 1890 to about 1920. Now, William Woodley was a bee farmer, and when modern beekeeping came to Britain, or at least became popular, or began at least in the mid 1870s, it was modern beekeeping was fledgling. Now, when I say modern beekeeping, I mean, instead of keeping bees in skeps, which are sort of woven baskets with sort of a wigwam on the top of it called a hackle, they started keeping bees in boxes with removable frames. Now, any Americans listening should look up the name Langstroth, who discovered the bee space, the distance you can put frames together, so they become still removable, and he invented the Langstroth hive, which is still there today. So that's kind of what modern beekeeping is: bees in boxes of removable frames. Now, William Woodley was a kind of pioneer to a certain extent. He was sort of second wave pioneer. So you had the first wave in Britain in the 1870s, who created the British Bee Journal and established the British Beekeepers Association, and that kind of kick-started the interest in modern beekeeping. And Woodley sort of came sort of second wave, trying to make a living from modern beekeeping, and he did indeed. He started a bee farm, firstly in his back garden at World's End, and then at an apiary also in the parish of Beedon, called Stanmore. So he had two apiaries. Now, by the time we get to the mid 1890s, it was certainly claimed in the British Bee Journal that William Woodley had the largest bee farm in Britain. Now, he would write probably fortnightly in the British Bee Journal, and latterly in the Beekeeper's Record. So he would write about primarily bees, but also the weather, topics concerning his village, topics concerning the county, things which change, like the cars, or the bee vans, or social trends, and I think where his work comes together, and this is what I've been doing, is this sort of iterative and emergent phenomena where, he might write a sentence or two on a particular topic, and then write it again and write something similar, or build onto it 6 months later, and then 10 years later that view has changed because of circumstances. So a picture of how changes have emerged, because he wrote, I think, for about 30 years. In addition to that, he was quite public spirited, and he would write to the landowner at the time, the Lockinge estate, when there were problems in the village, such as, say for instance, when there were issues with the nearby well or wells within the village, he would write to the Lockinge estate trying to get these things remedied. And it's only when you read it you kind of think, wow, these people were solely reliant on wells for their water. I mean, round here, around this neck of the woods on the Berkshire Downs, there isn't any watercourses, there's no streams or anything, so they had to dig wells. So Woodley wrote about a drought which happened in 1898, and a lot of the wells around here were running dry, so the farm labourers had to go 6 miles to get water from a mill stream in Donington. And a nearby village quite high up on the Berkshire Downs called Aldworth, their well, which was probably the deepest in the county, their well completely run dry. So if they wanted water, they were charged 4p a bucket. Can you imagine that? I mean, 4p back in 1898 was probably not a trivial amount for a farm labourer, having to pay for your. But how many buckets would you use in a day or a week? And when the drought was on, they had prayers, certainly in Beedon, in church. So I'm writing at the moment. I'm hoping to write writing a book about William Woodley, a biography. I have these. There's going to be chapters, but these chapters could, in places, be quite short. Little vignettes, little flavours of rural life in the 19th century, late 19th century. And one of them is going to be about wells, which I have been writing now. I'm not too sure when I'm going to publish it. I'm doing this sort of walk now in Beedon to go and take some photos for this article. Now, I'm now going to walk to a well which is now disused, but its iron wellhead is still there. It's the iron mechanism which would have been used to lower buckets down. That's still there. That's on a concrete plinth now. So I'm walking there to take some photographs. But what I'm trying to do, getting a book published. It depends what you want to do. I could go and self-publish a book today. I could just publish one book. One book. I mean, in a strange sort of way, I would put my heart and soul into it. Publish one book for my own kicks. You know, I'd be very, very proud of that. The problem is that if you want to do it on scale, in some ways it's cheaper, but if you want to get a publisher involved, you kind of have to prove to a certain extent, and I've had a chat with one publisher who seems to be interesting, but to a certain extent you need to sort of give them a degree of comfort that there's an audience, and this is kind of one of the reasons why I've gone on to Substack. So what I've about to do is publish this article on wells. One half will be on my behiveyourself.co.uk website, and the other half will be on my Substack. Part 2 will be on my Substack. Now, with Substack, you can, but it's not obligatory, sign up or subscribe to a Substacker like myself by subscribing using your email. You could, of course, press the no thanks button. The problem I have if people do the no thanks button is I've got no way of proving that I've got an audience. So in the sense that, how many subscribers have you got? 5. Right, and you want to publish this book. It doesn't sound like there's that much interest. And also, if I was going to market the book, I would need to try and establish how much interest there would be. So it's a tough gig marketing. So I'm not too sure where I'm going to go with this, but certainly cutting my blog. One of the reasons for doing the blog is to create some interest in the subject, but at the same time, people generally don't leave comments or anything, so I can't really establish what the interest is. So, I mean, I could just save myself a hell of a lot of heartache and just do this vanity project of just one book. But I kind of think I owe it to the man I'm writing about to do a little bit better than that. Even if it's a short run of, say, 20 books. But I really do think lots of people would be interested in this. There's certainly some interest when I published the topic of the Berkshire Beedon, which again was a late 19th century, early 20th century horse-drawn van which went from village to village promoting modern beekeeping, and Mr. Woodley and others left some information about that topic, quite detailed information. So that was quite good in Beecraft magazine, November 2023. If anyone wants to look that up, and that was the Berkshire Beedon. So yes, back to my vignette I'm doing. So what I'll do is probably put some photographs in the show notes. I don't think I'll have that article ready before this podcast is put out, but if you subscribe to Substack, please do, then you'll be kept in the loop about that. I've kind of at least I'm working on an animation showing the Western's well, which is a cast iron and mechanical cogs and wheels wellhead, and I've done the animation of that lowering a bucket of water down the well shaft. Now, I don't have the exact depth of that well shaft, but certainly a survey which was conducted in 1934 did show that of the 10 wells which they surveyed those 10 wells in the village because they had problems with them. They were running dry. There was certainly a drought in 1933, and certainly when you got to the spring, they were starting to get a bit concerned about some of the wells. But the average depth of the well shaft in this part of the woods, neck of the woods, was about 54 metres or 177 feet, and the average depth of the water within the well shaft was about 2 metres 20 or 7 foot. So that was that. Right, I'm going to sign off now because I don't want these people in the podcast necessarily. I thought I would finish off this episode by reading out a piece of writing from William Woodley. He wrote the following text in the October 1904 Beekeeper's Journal. It describes my situation at the moment, maybe yours too. So here's the reading. And now, also, the apiarist can calculate results and know how he has fared in the past season, if successful or the reverse. If success has crowned our efforts, we are, as our German cousin would say, dot happy bee man. But if our returns are poor, and the season has again disappointed us, do not let us lose heart and blame the bees. Depend on it, had suitable weather prevailed, they would have given a good account of themselves. Failures, of course, are disappointing and annoying, but they are inevitable. They are not confined to the beekeepers. Everyone whose calling depends on climatic conditions suffers along with those of our craft. Therefore, let us cheerfully begin to prepare for another year's work, and those of us who have fared badly this year may, with care and attention, have their turn of luck another season. And those were the words penned by William Woodley in 1904, bee farmer, showman and writer. Thank you to those who've reached out to me and wished me a speedy recovery. I'm more or less better now. I just have an occasional tickly cough to contend with. As always, you can contact me directly by email, podcast@behaveyourself.co.uk. You can follow and support my work by visiting behaveyourself.co.uk or visit my Substack. My handle is @behaveyourselfshow. The music is called Solitude by Entertainment for the Brain Dead and was created under a Creative Commons license. And this concludes this instalment of the Behave Yourself Show. And until next time, stay well.